Hello, everybody, and welcome to Penguins to Go, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we answer listener questions on Tip of the Ice-Burgh, but there was one that was intriguing, and I wanted to save it for this Friday episode of Penguins to Go. The question is, what is the Penguins' key to advancing past the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2018? Now, posing this question does seemingly put the cart before the horse for the season for a team that missed the playoffs entirely in 2023. Not to mention the fact it's September 1st. We're a long way away from caring and worrying about whether or not the Pittsburgh Penguins can win their first round playoff series simply because they have to make the playoffs first. The season hasn't started yet. There's a lot to go through, but the reason this question caught my eye and the reason I found it so intriguing. By the way, thank you to Dylan Menzel, second question of the week for listener questions. Keep them coming, buddy. It's a difficult, nearly impossible question to give an honest answer about at this stage of the hockey calendar. But it raises another question in my eyes that you can answer. What does this team need to do during the regular season to set themselves up for postseason success this season? And the answer to that is simple. They need to finish in the top three of the Metropolitan Division. They've done it multiple times, more times than not, since the Metropolitan Division was created during the 2013-14 season. But the reason that is so important is because wildcard teams are 12-20 in their first round series since this new postseason structure began in 2014. 12-20. Far below 500. And there's only been 1 year where more teams that are wild cards have won than have lost. And that was 2019 when wild card teams went 4-0. A crazy postseason to say the least. But 12-20. For an aging Pittsburgh Penguins team, that is such a massive piece of importance, a massive thing to stress if you're Mike Sullivan. They need to finish in the top three in the Metro. And I know what you might be saying. Listen, Nick, last year they didn't finish in the top 8 in the East. Let's worry about getting into the playoffs before we worry about seeding. I'm going into this worried about seeding. Because when you look at those odds, not to mention the fact that that's just to win a round in the playoffs. Yeah, that's where the base of this question was, but when you have a core of players like Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and now you can add on Erik Karlsson to that, their aspirations are much further along than winning one round in the postseason. They want to win it all. That's the ultimate goal every year for every team. But they're not going to take a moral victory of, hey, we got to the playoffs, we won a couple rounds, that's a step in the right direction. Maybe the organization, maybe the ownership will look at it that way. But these players, and this team in general, needs to look at every season from here on out for the rest of Crosby's career as the last chance, or at least the last best chance, to win another Stanley Cup. And while, yes, 12 out of 32 is 34% success rate for wildcard teams to win a series. Only 2 teams have gone from being a wildcard to making it to the Stanley Cup final. Neither of them won. The first one was Nashville in 2017. Of course, they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And the most recent one was Florida this past season. They lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. So if the Pittsburgh Penguins want to, 1, win a playoff series, and more importantly, number 2, go on a run and hopefully win the 6th Stanley Cup in franchise history and the 4th of Sidney Crosby's career, they really need to finish in the top 3 of the Metropolitan Division. That should be stressed to this team from day one. Not only do they want to finish, obviously they're going to stress the fact that they want to come out on top. They want to be the number one team in the division, but it is imperative that they finish in the top three and do not become a wild card team for multiple reasons. One, you want to have that safety and security winding down towards the playoffs so you can gear up for the postseason. And two, simply put, you have better odds to make it to the Stanley Cup final and win the Stanley Cup final when you're not on the road every single series to start the series. Now, here's the thing. Could have left it at that. Could have made it as simple as you just need to finish in the top three in the Metro. That's cut and dry. That's the answer. But in order to do that, the one area last season that when you look back and you look at the head-to-head results, the Penguins have to perform better against the best teams in their division. They have to rise to the occasion when taking on these rivalry teams, these teams that are going to come in first, second, or third, or be battling the Pittsburgh Penguins for first, second, and third in the Metropolitan Division. Last year, Carolina finished in first place in the division. Then it was the New Jersey Devils. Then it was the New York Rangers. Against those three teams combined, the Pittsburgh Penguins went 2-7-3. That is abysmal. They had no wins, none, against the Carolina Hurricanes or the New Jersey Devils. And then they split the season series with the New York Rangers. On top of that, the other playoff team from the Metropolitan Division that the Penguins were battling to the very last week of the regular season, that's the New York Islanders. The Penguins were 0-3-1. So against playoff teams in their own division, the grand total for the Penguins last year was 2 wins, 10 regulation losses, and 4 overtime losses. Simply not good enough. Now you can say, hey, despite that, they were still a point away from the postseason. If they got into the playoffs over the Florida Panthers, do we really believe they would have been able to take down the Boston Bruins in the same way? Do we really believe they would have been able to go on a run the same way the Florida Panthers did? No. Because in the most important games of the season, games against the Canes, games against the Devils, massive games against the Rangers and the Islanders, they fell apart. They either didn't show up, like was the case a couple of times against the Islanders and against the Rangers, or they blew a third period lead. Played a good first 2 periods and then just disintegrated in the third. Now this team is much different on paper than it was at the end of last season, but they need to rise to the occasion against their own division in order to finish higher in their division to get great seeding, to finish in the top 3 at least of the Metropolitan Division. Standing here on September 1st, that's the best answer I can give you for the key for the Pittsburgh Penguins to advance past the first round. They need to be better in their own division, and that is going to be something that is going to be stressed by Mike Sullivan, Kyle Dubas, and the rest of the organization this season. That's going to do it for this episode of Penguins to Go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.